You're live.
Okay, welcome folks, welcome back. This is
11 C's.
Wednesday, May 13th, and we're back on. Who are you looking for, Karen? He's out having a smoke. Good luck. You know the drill.
On camera, sure.
No. So we're gonna have some committee discussion on S-193. One thing I'd like to start with is we ended the day yesterday with Kim McManus presenting a thought in terms of the feasibility plan to sort of have two paths for the feasibility plan for them to come back with how we have laid it out at this point. And then for them in the plan to also present a comparison that if this was under the Department of Corrections, how that would look. Is that fair to say, Kim? Or do you want to explain it more in depth of what you were thinking? Bring you back to yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, it sounds like it was a week ago, right?
What did I connect to?
Who? Yeah. The committee would consider wording the feasibility plan so that the plan should have plan incorporating or seeing how DOC
Be incorporated.
and one that completely does not have DOC and being able to see those side by side. And I believe that I was reading a report from 2023 that had a similar breakdown, which was helpful for me to look at. And that's what I was thinking of when I suggested that. So there's the, yes.
So it would incorporate, I mean, it would be two plans. It would be the plan that would show two different versions, basically.
Yes.
One that would not incorporate DOC, and one that would incorporate DOC. And if it was, and if DOC was incorporated, in what way would they be
Yeah.
involved?
Yes, and I think that's one idea. And then the other idea that a few representatives at the table were thinking of as well is there, can there be the plan as draft that's passed out with the Senate that it starts with DOC, but that AHS is asked to create a plan for a longer term vision of a separate facility. Can those two things be happening at the same time?
I think my reservation, Kevin, folks, on the side by side is any discussions we've had with AHS. You feel like you know how the movie's going to end. There's been an inflexibility to consider any type of option where a facility is managed by another entity. And just in my experience, when you give the group writing the report a side by side of two options and you know they prefer the other one, I worry if it corrupts the other option, just like I saw in the staffing plan for state employees providing healthcare as opposed to a private contractor. It was a very apples and oranges report we got back with different numbers of positions, you know. And I didn't trust the numbers, you know. So that's my issue with having the side by side is I think what one would look a lot more attractive that we get back.
I'm going to back up before I answer the question. And I'm going to talk in a more general sense based on where I was yesterday. And again, after something that Kim brought to the table, and I'm grateful that she did. And I'm grateful that she did it. And I know her role kind of prevents her from getting specific, but there was a kindness there that didn't point directly to how of the 7 examples currently, how one of them lands in my community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that more directly. And I may get emotional doing this because my community is incredibly impacted by the Chittenden County example. And this is Jason Eaton. And Jason Eaton is charged credibly charged, if I want to use the vernacular, and I'll come back to those words here in a second, more than a second probably. Was shooting 3 Palestinian college men who were visiting my neighborhood because that's where their grandmother lives for Thanksgiving, permanently paralyzing one of those men. That incident happened. I walked by the house that he would have walked out of numerous times. I run by that house numerous times. It is blocks from where I live. And my community has no uncertainty around what they hope happens to the person who has been charged with that crime. So I understand exactly why the examples, and there's 7 right now, that's one of them, carries emotional weight.
Uh-huh.
And it does for me too, and for my community. I still, nonetheless, believe wholeheartedly, and especially within these emotionally difficult cases, is not where we should suspend principled policymaking. And I believe that those emotionally laden cases are precisely where constitutional principles of due process matter the most. And I'll see these people tonight. I'm going to my neighborhood planning assembly tonight, and the people who are most active on my community are going to be there. I don't know if they've been following this, but I get questions often about this. It is my role. It is absolutely my role to explain to them how our current system, let me say it this way, it would be politically gratifying and rewarding for me to tell them, to go to them and say, I have found a way and a vehicle that would keep him in prison anyway. And Kim is right. He may be found insane. He's working on his insanity defense right now, and his court case has been delayed until September. There is a possibility that he could be found insane and then therefore not guilty. That could happen. It could also happen that the courts are going to say, no, he was not insane and he's going to be found guilty and spend the rest of his life in jail. That could happen too. And I don't like to do the what if game, but let's do it. He could be found insane and therefore not guilty. And it is my role to explain to my constituents what that means. And we are here not because, as has been suggested, we're making it more difficult to keep him in prison anyway. That is not why we're here. We are here because we do not have a forensic facility. And we have had multiple opportunities over the past decades to create a forensic facility. And we are not doing that with this bill. We are just handing it over to DOC. And we have been told that it's only 6 or 7 people. We have been told that these are credibly accused, credibly charged people. That is not the threshold by which we decide whether or not somebody should stay incarcerated. The threshold by which we decide somebody should stay incarcerated is whether or not a jury of their peers has found them guilty. That is the threshold. This credibly charged stuff is a straw man. So again, I understand exactly why this carries emotional weight. It carries emotional weight for me. It carries emotional weight for my constituents. All that being said, individuals undergoing competency evaluation or restoration, individuals who have been found not guilty by reasons of insanity, have therefore not been convicted. And the purpose of a forensic system is clinical evaluation and treatment. It is not punishment. It is not. And I remain deeply concerned about creating statutory authority that places these functions under the Department of Corrections. It is separate from corrections. It's the easy answer right now to just hand them to DOC. It's the cheaper answer right now. This is expensive. It requires money. Absolutely. But once we open that door, even narrowly, even for 5 or 6 people, precedent does suggest that those exceptions rarely remain that narrow. And we have already talked about how this is legitimately more than 6 or 7 people. We are being asked to make a structural decision about the future of forensic mental health in Vermont. And I believe that system should be clinically led, treatment-centered, and independent from the correctional system. Public safety does matter. Absolutely, it matters. Absolutely. But so does due process. And the hardest cases, the ones that we're being asked to discuss, are precisely where our commitment to those principles are tested. And I agree with Connor. No surprise there, probably, that the administration has already forecast where they were ready to write rules. That's how the bill landed in our office, or in our committee. Rulemaking was part of it. They were just going to write rules. It was a foregone conclusion that this was going to be a DOC thing, and here are the rules that we have to make. We are asking them to tap the brakes and say, can you please consider a model where this is separate from the DOC? That is all we are doing with this bill. That is all we are doing with this bill. We have an opportunity right now to do this right, and I would like to do it right. And I would like to ask that question, separate from a side-by-side. Thank you for enduring.
Other folks?
I guess I kind of want to ask a question, and I'll go ahead and look like a boob to do it.
Bob?
Yeah, I do it all the time. I want to know what we would get from this bill, and I guess I want to start because I think it'll be smaller and easier with the small group of people that we're talking about. What would they gain from this legislation?
In terms of the form that it's in now?
Yeah, sure.
Well, the forensic facility piece, the definition of it, does not become effective until January 1st of 28. So there wouldn't be a facility up and running, or even beginning to be up and running till January 1st of 28. The way we've looked at it is to have the Agency of Human Services come back with a plan, not a study, but the plan in terms of how would you actually operate a forensic facility? What would it look like? That would be given to the legislature next session, for the legislature to work through that, knowing that the next year a forensic facility would be in the works to be up and running, and rules would start to be promulgated in 28. In terms of effective dates, because you've got to go to the effective dates. In terms of section 3. All the structure that's House Judiciary has put in terms of who would be placed in a forensic facility, the reviews in terms of competency, and then going to the courts, and then the state's attorney having to prove beyond a clear and convincing evidence that the person is not dangerous to the public. If they're not competent, and could be released. All of that takes effect January 1st, 28.
I'm going even more basic. So leaving aside the timing, this small group of individuals would be offered more competency restoration services than they are currently.
Than they are now.
Is that it?
That's it. But it won't start
Yeah.
until January 1st of 28, where the process would start being in place. So then the question becomes, and no one has vetted this, but this just came to my mind, when we have changed anything within the world of corrections and a person let's say there's a big policy change that we have made. Let me use like pretrial supervision. So there could be a person that would qualify, might qualify for pretrial supervision, but would not qualify for that program if they went through the courts and were released on June 30th. The law would be effective July 1st. Anyone after July 1st will qualify. Anyone before July 1st, where the law went in place, would not qualify. So the question is, those folks who are held right now, would they qualify for any of these services? Because they're already held. So is it just when the law becomes effective and folks come in under the new law, they would qualify, but what about those folks who are currently sitting there? Would they qualify or not? I don't know, because those court decisions to hold them were made prior to the law being in effect for a forensic facility. And nobody's asked that question. But we ask that in DOC a lot. If you change a sentence or you change a program that's available, it's going forward when the law becomes effective. It doesn't go backwards to catch all those folks. So how would that change for those folks who are currently sitting there? I don't know. We haven't asked that question.
Well, and then the flip side to my question, so we're talking about what's going to be offered should this pass to the folks who are accused of these crimes. What would this legislation offer to the community, to those whose safety is threatened? What is going to be different if this goes through for those people in the community than what's going on right now?
Right, and that was the question that Joe asked. Joe asked that.
Yeah.
And I think what we heard from the Chair of Human Services, when you look at who is monitoring out there, you've got Dale that is supervising or monitoring folks who are under Act 248. Supposedly, there may be some monitoring or supervision of folks under the Department of Mental Health, but I've heard that's kind of there, but not there. And what if a person is not under Act 248? Is the Department of Mental Health that would supervise. So it's kind of what the Chair of Human Services implicated too, was that Dale is already doing this for the Act 248 folks. They're not doing it for other folks under their jurisdiction as well, and they could, but it appears as if they don't want to.
But so how would this legislation increase safety or security for the community?
I mean, what I'm looking at for the language is that we have, like in the feasibility plan, if you go to page 21, well, that's the forensic facility.
Sorry, I got-
Page 21, that would be the forensic facility, is the Secretary of Human Services. On lines 10 through 13, that the Secretary of Human Services would need to determine the post-release monitoring of any former residents. And do we say, I'll go to the plan, then the plan says that the feasibility plan would also make sure, other than DOC, would need to deal with the post-release monitoring of any former residents. So that also has to be in the plan.
I mean, it seems like at its simplest, you could offer competency restoration services under whatever you want to call what we have now. And it also seems like we could offer a greater monitoring of those who need to have supervision, but not to be in a secure facility under what we have now. And so I don't understand what this improves.
Why we need the bill, you mean?
How does this make things better? And it's not rhetorical. I mean, yeah, I'm not trying to be too cute.
Well, the argument we heard yesterday, and I don't want to defend anybody, but the argument we heard yesterday is folks are sitting there right now without any programming for restoration of competence,
Which we could offer.
which we could offer right now if we wanted to, if they wanted to increase their budgets to do this.
And what of these folks who are released because they are, well, because they're released and they commit a horrible crime, could they be supervised appropriately under what we have now?
Currently,
Yes.
I don't think so. I mean, it's,
I mean, that's the catalyst of the bill. Whether
That's why it's a gap.
I know that it's a gap in terms of what's happening. I'm not clear on why it's a gap in terms of what could happen right now.
So they don't have authorization, they have funding.
So these folks that we're talking about who are accused of committing a crime and we're concerned that they're going to commit another one in public could right now be under supervision in public if that's deemed appropriate without this bill.
saying no, and that's my understanding.
Why not?
I don't, we're not the legal, I don't know, but that would be a question.
Haven't spoke to DLC or AHS, they're not doing it now.
But they could.
Kim, can you weigh in on this at all? Or not?
Me too.
Yeah, this is like so fundamental. It's
No, that's
so
fine.
basic. I mean, yeah.
So if you have an individual who's been accused, and we'll say serious felony.
One of the biggies, yeah,
One of the
yeah.
biggies. They've been found incompetent, so they've been held while figuring that out, and then decision is they're incompetent. They'll be held a little bit longer, because usually if it's one of these big ones, we will fight against that decision, maybe get another evaluation, see what's going on.
State's attorneys would fight against that, just to be clear, what entity we're talking about.
So that back and forth will go on, but there's eventually an end point if incompetency keeps being. We can't prove that they're competent and they can't have their trial.
Yep.
Eventually, their defense attorney will ask in the interest of justice that they be released, that they're no longer held. And they will ask that the charges be dismissed. So if the charges are dismissed, person leaves, there's no conditions of release, there's no supervision. If they meet the definition for needing a hospitalization order, which you've heard is very narrow definition, maybe they'll have some connection with DMH. Or if they meet the definition of for Act 248, maybe they'll have that. But if they don't meet either of those definitions, then nobody's checking in, watching, caring for these individuals, unless they're getting some other community resources. But we can't do anything until another crime is committed. And then the same process starts over again, because competency is fluid. So you're presumed competent until you're found incompetent. So that's the main issue, one of many issues, but those folks, if they're not falling into those narrow pieces with DMH or Dale, nobody's supervising or caring for them.
And if it were a forensic facility within a Department of Corrections facility, then these folks could be kept there indefinitely. No.
No, well, it would depend on, we have to go through that decision tree of what's happening. So if they competency was restored, then their case would go forward.
Yes.
We have a decision on that.
But they haven't.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
If they've been found incompetent, then the next question is, are they a risk to the public? Right, so there's a split there. If they're not a risk, or as Teresa was saying, if they're a risk, but there's this prescription of you do this and this, and you're being watched by this commissioner right now, that's how the bill's drafted. Then you can be released under these conditions of release. That's what we don't have right now for folks leaving. Any sort of conditions that you can be in the public for that group that's been found incompetent, but we think we can manage and mitigate their risk factor with this prescription, so to speak. If we can't manage that in the public, right now, this bill would allow the person to stay in the facility, and the idea is that they're continuing to get treatment to deal with that risk piece, like that risk management. Because they're not gonna be restored for competency, that's been decided.
Right.
Now we're like, how can this person re-enter society and not be a risk to the public? That would be the continued treatment.
And that's
And
no
then
longer a
you-
forensic
and then-
facility, right? Because a forensic facility exists to restore confidence so that you can stand trial, no?
No, it's for both. Yeah, there's a competency restoration piece, but then it's also for individuals who can fall into this who, if they're dangerous to the public, you're trying to mitigate that dangers to the public, and then they can be released. This would, in other states, when there's very famous cases, right, where folks assassinated a president, right, and eventually they're found to no longer be a risk to the public, and then they are released. So
Right.
it's not, it would only be indefinite if that risk could never be brought down to a level that was considered to be.
And then if you're no longer trying to restore competence, what then distinguishes that forensic facility from, say, a stateside hospital, for instance?
Well, again, depending on, like right now, our state psych hospital, you need that very narrow definition for a hospitalization order. So the other states do have hospitals that would treat the person you're envisioning. Our state does not have that. So the concept right now is that we would create a forensic facility to fill that need.
Okay,
May I ask the
I appreciate
question a
it.
different way? What laws have changed since we lost our forensic facility? Because if the forensic facility was still here, that was Waterbury, right? Was that not forensic? Where was the?
We never,
We never had
we've never
Yeah.
had that.
That is my question. Yeah, but thank you. We've never had it. Gotcha.
So, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, committee, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm seeing with the bill is what we want to have established is a forensic facility. I'm not gonna say where or whatever. And it would, the programming and the support, therapeutic support and the operations within that facility would be through the Agency of Human Services, which could be, or we envision, whatever it might be, Department of Health, Department of Mental Health, Department of Jail, that they're the ones who would be providing those services in the therapeutic environment for folks for, it would be establishing a restoration of competency program within the Agency of Human Services. That's the fundamental part, I think, of this bill. But that's what it establishes. The question then becomes, where is the facility housed? And who provides the security of the facility itself in terms of outside the building itself? And who provides the security at the front end of that building in terms of monitoring folks who are coming in and out, like visitation or folks coming in to provide services like the legal the legal counsel going through admitting them into the building, but not in the living units. Living units are staffed by folks within the Agency of Human Services to provide those services, not security. Security is outside the building in the front end of the building. That's what I'm envisioning. And I don't know if I'm off base on that, but that's what I'm envisioning. So anyone correct me if I'm interpreting the bill wrong or different. We're looking.
I think I'm sort of pivoting based on how the bill is written here. We don't specify what AHS security would look like, right? Is it,
That's true.
is it Billy Bob's private security company there that just get called in who have no training with the specific patient population, you know? I'd rather have DOC over that, so I just wonder if it's like, there's a need to specify. I envision like psych techs from the Vermont Psychiatric Hospital doing the work inside. But there's nothing in the bill that necessarily puts it in that direction, right? It's not saying that state employees, could be anybody providing the security. We just say not DOC. Which I agree with, not DOC, but, you know, I don't know what AHS is going to come back with that direction.
That's why we want the plan.
The cheaper option would be to do private security. That might not have much training in this.
That's what we also have to balance out. We have said if the building is on the campus of a correctional facility, then the security outside the building is with DOC because they're already there. If the building is elsewhere, it's a whole different, I mean, it's a whole different ball of wax. So where are we? Go round and round and round. We did a lot of work to have a feasibility plan. Would it be helpful to look at the language of what we put there? For them to come back? Would it be helpful to work a little bit on what Kim has proposed? They have to do a comparison in their plan.
I think, could be wrong, but relatively decent attendance in rooms, and I think that everybody's mind's made up, but I also feel like I'm on my own little island, which is okay. I've been there before. I have a short-term vision, which is what the original bill contemplates. I don't know that I would agree that the original bill contemplates the longer-term vision. I think most of us probably are on the same page on that, but I don't know that the long-term vision, the original bill's intention of closing that gap, which we've talked about, that the law doesn't allow for these individuals to be held. So once it's determined that they're incompetent, eventually they gotta go. We don't have an ability to hold them. So getting that part done, I think is important, and getting the restoration program up is important. I think that's one step, and I'm not sure that I think that we need to blow everything up in order to get the second step. But I do think there should be a part that says, hey, by the way, we want you to do this immediately because we want the law to cover this. We want to make sure that somebody's not walking out the door because of this situation. And then we have a provision that says, by the way, by X date, whatever the dates are, that's beyond my capacity at this second. We want this to happen, whether it's a wing, whether it's a new pod at Springfield, whatever it is. Here's the thing that we want to see as a long-term goal. And I don't mean 20 years down the road, but so I think they're to me, they're two separate things. There's the immediate need, and let's get this done and not. But also, here's the second part. Here's our long-term, and no, it's not going to be kicked down the road. These are the dates. That's fine. My island view of James's world.
So if you look at the bills that came over from the Senate, the forensic competency restoration services within forensic facility does not take effect until January 1st of 28.
I didn't say I agree with that.
Are you saying it comes effective July 1st, 26?
I
that
would
what
make
you're
it as
saying?
I would make it as soon as I could. Whatever is legitimately possible to enact.
And the problem is the administration hasn't come with a budget that backs up anything like that. There's no
as
money
we-
for it in this
as
budget.
we talk about in this room all the time, other people's problems aren't our problem. This whole thing about legislating our morality and all this other stuff. I'm not telling anybody to agree with me. I'm saying my point of view. If I got to make the decision, those two steps would be done immediately. And I don't give a darn how they pay for it. I want it done because it's a safety issue. And then I want to have a plan for the longer term that I think most of us all agree on is the longer term plan. I'm not judging based on what they think they can do or what their opinions are or anything else. I'm saying that I get to decide.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the ship has sailed on the 27 budget, you know, it's
Ship has sailed on.
It could be next year. I'm just telling you this, what,
Mhm.
you know, we can all poo-poo everybody's ideas. That's great. But I'm just saying, if we had our brothers, what do we want it done sooner or later? Do we agree that it's later? I don't agree that it's later. Just happens to be the way the bill was written. I didn't write the bill. Doesn't mean I agree. I don't care where the bill came from. You know,
And we
should have
have-
been done 10 years ago.
Yeah, but we're not gonna correct what has to be
Mhm.
happening. And I think we have to really think realistically about this, because Connor is right. Our FY 27 budget does not contemplate any of this. And we looked at that when we did some changes that impacted DOC's budget. We were very clear it would not impact FY 27
Mhm.
budget. We bumped it out to FY 28.
Yep.
And that's what this legislation does. I think if we propose July 1st of this year, I don't know how the other committees would
I
react.
don't think
to
it would
So
be
I think we need to be realistic about that.
But we're having a conversation about what we want. And it's funny that, and I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna sound like a real mean person. But when certain people say what their ideas are, even if they're unrealistic to the rest of us, they're accepted. Or just like, oh, it's a great idea, but other people have an idea and now all of a sudden I don't agree with it. Well, it's a crappy idea and why we can't do it. I don't run my life that way. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, male, female. That's not how I run my life. If we're gonna have an open conversation, it's an open conversation. And so, yeah, maybe it's July of 27 instead of 28. I stated my opinion on what I would think if I was in charge. Not that I think that we can do it. So, we gotta start being more open to other people. Cause there's people in this room that every time they open their mouth, everybody else is, oh, geez, again. But yet they're also very intolerant when they get to voice their opinions. We gotta stop that. We're all better than this. Listen to each other's opinions and take them for what they are instead of, that's not my view. So no, I'm sorry, I can't handle that.
So folks, we have language that we've been working on for 3 weeks. I know people are tired of working on this, don't want to deal with this anymore. So we have to make some decisions here. And there's been a proposal, a thought put on the table late yesterday. We have that feasibility plan to come back. It's been very clear in terms of the rest of the bill, what needs to be offered within a forensic facility. And we're looking in the feasibility plan, and it might be good to go to the language to see what we're talking about, so we're all on the same page and understanding the language. That the agency needs to come back, what page 26? The Agency of Human Services needs to also consult with BGS, because there are requirements there that's gonna take BGS into consideration. They need to come back to us about how they would operate staff and provide programming at the forensic facility.
Mhm.
And the plan would need to include a proposed location, design plans for the facility in terms of how you'd separate the residents by gender or clinical need, number of beds, what entity or entities would be responsible for operating it and providing the services, the timeline for the construction, estimated cost of constructing or fitting up, as well as the operational costs. And then aspects of the therapeutic community residence rule, which would need to be modified, because they want to expand that a little. They want to expand that a little bit or have an adjustment on that rule in terms of allowing for forensic facility. What clinical services would be available, proposed staffing levels, staff qualifications, physical and staff security plan, plan for resident discharge and community monitoring plan. And in the interim, we were very concerned that possibly they could find out-of-state placement in the interim before we get the forensic facility up and running. And any recommendations for legislative action. That's where we were. Are we in a different place?
I am. I like what we have here, but I think we need to do what James is suggesting that, the direct current system to add the therapeutics, the programming for this small group of people as soon as possible. That we not restrict the plans so that we come up with one plan that utilizes DOC and the other plan that does not. So we see both of those whenever they can get that plan out.
So who would be offering the therapeutic services under your thought?
Whoever we choose is the best. If we don't like WellPath, it's interesting. For weeks, I thought you guys loved WellPath, but now you don't like WellPath.
Oh, I never liked WellPath.
That's fine.
Never been.
That's fine. So whoever is the best to do it.
Mhm.
But that's not our decision, right? That's the department's decision.
Well, it depends on if you want to privatize it, have state employees do it.
Right.
Like, I think you would have to put those guardrails in there.
But something more in programmatic and therapeutics right now for the 7+ people is better than not. And a longer term plan that says, how can we do this right?
Yeah, what we consider right.
Makes sense. And we're still here because the BAA was not solved. It hasn't been signed.
The
What
budget.
Money, the budget hasn't been finalized. That's why we're still here.
27?
So we're still here for that. So this is important. It can still get done.
Other folks?
I can support the current draft. I'm barely there. I think it's dishonest to the public in a sense to say this population is more dangerous than other people could be dangerous. I get that some people say it's a starting point. I still think like this whole thing feels dishonest. It's like we're building a forensic facility, but it's actually not a facility. It's just adding one staffer according to the first plan. So I'm feeling a bit of lack of trust with the folks coming in and presenting this stuff. I've moved on a few things. I never thought I'd be okay with this being in defense of a correctional facility. I can get there. I haven't heard any movement on the other side. And my fear, I believe this is what's going to happen. This feasibility report's going to come back. This isn't feasible. Here's the corrections plan again. And it'll just keep kicking the can down the road here.
That's why we wanted the feasibility plan, so we didn't kick it.
Yep.
That's why we wanted.
I also worry that
So,
when you start with something that looks like an interim plan, the way it usually works in state government is that ends up being the final plan. Because you've got something, it might not be great, but it's not going to be a big policy like priority going into another session. And, I see how a 50-bed facility could probably not be placed at the moment. I could see how it would cost millions and millions. But again, we should be honest with ourselves. Is this the right now kind of plan, or is it the right plan? If it's the right plan, it's a lot bigger than what we got here.
other folks? Gotta make a decision sometime, folks.
I can support the amendment as written currently in our 5.1 draft. Aside from that, we are being asked to open a door that I am not willing to open, that gives DOC far too much control over a competency restoration plan that should not belong with the DOC.
And the rest of the bill does deal with that.
I know, yeah,
Does deal with that.
but I'm saying I can't revert back to the Senate. I just can't.
Wow. Go, folks.
Big surprise, I'm in the middle somewhere. I guess I see our issues that we have, that it's right now, we don't even have a facility. We've got these people in DOC and they're not getting any help. So I guess I would like to help them now for a little while until we do figure something out. We don't have a facility. I think it would be nice if we did. I would like to maybe down the road build that. But I've been sitting in here for 2 years now, and that does take time. So I do think to be just with myself, to just be honest with myself, and I'm not asking any of you to believe what I'm saying. I'm just trying to share it with you because I'm still trying to work all this out. You know, I see what James saying. I see what Troy and Connor are saying, but I also want to share with you that I do have a lot of faith in the people who talk to us. I guess, you know, like, you know, the Commissioner Hawks or Haas, and then, you know, the people that are all in here, I think they are trying to do right by these people. I've always, you know, in my life, I've worked with people that I trust, and I hope that they're doing the right thing. And I feel like these people are trying to do the right thing. I don't think that precludes us trying to get to a forensics facility. I do want to do that. I talked to Alice last night about an idea I had, you know me, Mr. Renovation, trying to figure out a building that we have and try to make it work there. I mean, we all saw that old state, you know, police barracks, and I would love to see it built there. But I also feel like, you know, if we're going to be really black and white, I don't think we're going to find any middle ground. And I'm trying to find some middle ground. So, you know, I don't have any big answers. But I do. The people who have come in here and said they want to help these people, and they're trying to do this, and I know it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. I just would hate for us to just walk away and then nothing happens. And I'd love for something to happen. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to get, you know, some of these ideas together in a way that would move us forward in a positive way. And I don't have a real answer for that yet. You know, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I feel like, you know, Kim and all the people here have really tried to explain the situation, but I know where Troy's at, and it's so hard because I know he's so passionate about doing the right thing by these people in these facilities. And I want to get there. I want that to be a goal. But I think if we make that a goal right now, I don't think anything's going to happen. And that's what I'm afraid of. So I guess I need some help figuring out like how you build that. I'm not having a lot of clarity with. I'm trying to share this with you, but I'm not sure how to how to explain how to get there.
Mhm.
So I'd love us to talk more about that.
Well, my concern, and you heard it yesterday when I asked about, or said before the commissioner that, you know, they didn't really see that we would need more money or resources to do this. That was a question there. I think as we're working with these 4 committees, but then the agencies, everyone has their kind of vision of what this is. You know, first I thought the plan to, you know, instead of a study, because you heard me say, I don't want to hear about we're studying a study that studied the study from 10 years ago. Don't want to go there. But I'm afraid that the plan at this point, with everyone's very different opinions and pieces to it, that this plan will come out and we'll go through the same process as if there was a study.
Mhm.
Then people may just go, and I hope not, because I'm very respectful of what we had envisioned. But, you know, that's why I said yesterday, we have to be honest and realistic
Mhm.
with what we're looking at, because we know darn well, just looking at our budget every year, we punt kick down the road project after project after project. So I probably don't see a different facility at this point because there's been no money there. So that I struggle with that as well. In listening to all the different agencies that they've been in what we're doing as far as if you could call it being a forensic facility presently in corrections. They see the ins and outs, and I think obviously we need to take some of their concerns into consideration. But even hearing Teresa today, and again, I know each committee has their piece of it that they want to make it right, but even to hear that we're going to more language change to do what is hard to get my arms around the whole piece now.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to find a roadblock to do that, but I am concerned because I have a feeling even if tomorrow's the drop dead date for judiciary, you're possibly going to have healthcare and human services on a totally different page than even we are.
I think the changes that Teresa was looking at would be a conversation with her committee and House Judiciary for that. I don't think it was that major. So what I'm hearing is long-term plan and a short-term plan. And the long-term plan we've addressed.
Mhm.
The short-term plan, right now, nobody's getting any services. Basically,
And
nobody's
any
getting any
services.
services right now.
and I'm not meaning to interrupt, can we get what a price tag would be to possibly have folks maybe in a facility outside of the state for these 5 or 6 people? That was one of our
That was one of
questions.
our questions.
That's-
That's in the plan.
That's
the
Number
interim.
12 on page 29.
Right, but we've never gotten a cost. Is that a realistic, or do we not want to, do we want to have the policy that we don't want folks going out of state? I mean, I don't know what that does to the other groups that have been working within this. Does that make it more difficult for the state's attorneys, for, any of the other folks involved or who have been technically involved in this?
We have some of the agency of human services folks here, and I don't want to put you on the spots, but has there been any conversations in the interim of housing some of the folks that we're currently holding in and out of state forensic facility? Has there been any conversation on that and any thoughts on the cost?
There have been conversations on this.
Could you speak up a little?
Yeah.
Because we got noise on the outside here.
Yeah, there have been conversations on this as that concept was kind of introduced in the committee. I think DOC is probably the best person to speak to that.
Why DOC?
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
So as this topic came up in testimony and in conversation, we have talked about it. I think we would really want to know. We haven't looked into the specific programs and treatments, so we would really want to know what kind of quality and oversight measures are there. And I think you've heard Commissioner Murad speaking in, that was in Human Services. In Human Services, Commissioner Murad testified that typically pretrial detainees are not placed out of state. That's what is.
So people were looking at it through the lens of being a detainee. That was the lens they were looking at it. So that tells you it's under corrections right then and there.
I gotta be dumb again.
Well,
Sorry, I'll try to keep it
I'm
short.
feeling dumb too.
Who are these people that are not getting services now?
There are some folks who are in there that I'm not sure how many folks are in there, and Kim, maybe you can help, who have been deemed incompetent to stand trial. They have a charge and they've been deemed incompetent to stand trial.
They're currently still being held by DOC.
In the deals.
I would need to double check on that before I said a number. I know there's some that are in the midst of their competency battle back and forth. And some of them have had an incompetency finding. There's one case that's been going on for 5 years where a person was found incompetent twice, but then recently it's been found competent. So that person was being held.
For that whole length of time. You know,
I would
incarcerated.
need to check before I say.
What's my,
I thought I heard Commissioner Murad say just with murder charges, the number was 7.
I guess my follow-up question is, why are these people not receiving services right now?
So we don't have a restoration competency program.
Can that not be offered to them in our current setup without this legislation?
And that's what's going through my mind. Is there a way in the interim? We've got some folks who are being housed right now for those particular folks. Is there a way that we could have an MOU or something between the different departments in the Agency of Human Services, not DOC, but the other departments to provide those services to the folks?
I mean, just to make it plain, the place that I'm getting to is it seems like whatever services we're talking about could be offered right now, but for whatever reason, we're choosing not to. And so this notion that this bill is necessary to provide those services is a fig leaf to make us feel better about it. What we're actually talking about is community safety, and let's have that conversation. If we're doing this for expedience, fine, but we don't get to say it that we're doing it to provide services to these poor folks. We're not.
so I don't know the answer to that. I don't think any of us do. Maybe somebody somewhere does. But the second part, and I don't know how many people this pertains to, isn't the provision of the restoration program, which maybe is just not allowed by, or it's not authorized by law, so people aren't gonna do it. I don't know the answer to that. It's way beyond what I thought about so far. But then you get the other people, and I don't know how many people this is, that you can't keep once they've been deemed incompetent, because we don't have a law that allows that.
Yes.
So I get that in the back of my head. And I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea, but it's funny to me that in 8 years, I mean, I've had some pretty challenging bills, and this is the one that's kind of got me twisted in circles the most. It's kind of interesting, but I don't know the answer to these things, and it's kind of sure. Yeah, but I have same questions.
Yeah.
One thing, like, to Brian's point, like, this is a public safety bill, right? When I hear people talking about, like, okay, let's, make sure they have a due process and everything. Again, I want to be clear. There's a ton of people incompetent to stand trial in corrections, right? We're only focusing on like 5 or 7 of them, right?
Yeah.
So to say that we're doing this for the due process of the people, I think it's hollow, right? And we're not going to provide those services. And it's a difference between treatment and competency restoration. Those are 2 different things also, right? You can coach somebody. You can coach somebody to be competent to stand trial. Are you hitting the underlying issues there, the trauma informed, like? And I'm not hearing anything about that, So we got to say what it is. It's a public safety bill. And I would say it's the illusion of a public safety bill to some extent, though.
And I did offer your language.
I noticed it didn't make the final cut.
Dead on arrival, they won't even let me finish the statement.
Down there.
One of the chairs now
Oh,
on
yeah.
Friday. Dead on arrival, because they knew it would expand the whole facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So that was dead on arrival.
Someday in the future probably should happen.
I don't know where to go, folks. We've done a lot of work on this. Are we at the point of throwing away all the work that we did?
No.
Then that means we stay with our feasibility plan. Right? That means that we stay with how we've worked to define the forensic facility, because we made some changes on that. And we stay with the forensic facility I mean, it came over from the Senate, doesn't become effective until July 1st of 28. I mean, January 1st of 28. And next session, we'd get a plan back from the Agency of Human Services in terms of how that forensic facility would be staffed and operated. And the cost. That's where we are.
Well, I would step one further and I would not exclude DOC as being an option. Now, they may not be the best option, but we look at that when we see the two plans.
And what, oh, okay, and the DOC being the option of providing what?
Security. Facility, security. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to do the plan, but I'd like to see a plan that says whatever you think is right and whatever you think is right, but you can't have DOC involved. I want to see those two.
So one thing that we've talked about is if the building, the forensic facility is on a correctional campus, the DOC would provide security for that building on the periphery of that. Still there to provide that?
Yes.
Then the question is, do we want to open up the language to allow the front of the building? Remember, we're going into St. Albans, and remember going into Springfield facility, you had to go through the screening, metal detector, put
Yeah.
two things in the
Yeah.
locker. Should DOC be doing that in a forensic facility,
Sure.
but not in the living units? You're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna have correctional officers in the living units, you're not gonna have correctional officers in the program, cafeteria, that type of thing. Are we there for that in the committee?
No, I would suggest that within the facility, that the people who are providing the therapeutic and the programming, if they feel they need someone to come alongside of them, because the individual they're working with could be dangerous, in that case, two people go see them.
That would
That
be,
flexibility is what I think we need rather than one or the other.
that would be part of the feasibility plan to come
Fine.
back in terms of what the
Yep.
operational thing, so they could offer that.
Right.
The feasibility plan.
Exactly.
What I'm saying, instead of saying that DOC would only be provided on the periphery of the building,
Mhm.
if it's on a DOC campus.
Mhm.
That's where we are now. Would we open that up to allow DOC to be in the front part of the building for folks coming in and going out? Not the folks who are going to be the residents there, but for folks like, they could have visitation, right? They could have folks coming in from the outside to provide some programming. You've got to have some form of security for those folks coming in and out of the building. Would we be okay with DOC staffing that?
I'm okay with that. I am.
Trey?
I'm open to having that conversation. I am going to be very clear that if anything looks like this is going to be handed over, housed on Alpha Bravo units in Springfield, that is not a forensics approach. It's just not. Let's call it what it is. And I'm opposed to it. I also want to say it is okay for our committee, this committee of oversight, one of three right now, to say to the administration, do this. Do this. Right now, when we've suggested that that's what we're going to do with our amendment to this bill, the administration comes back and says, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. That's an indication to me that the administration isn't even willing to consider anything that they haven't already presented to us through the Senate bill. They were clear in their forecast about what they wanted to do. They wanted to hand this over to DOC and start writing the rules. That is the plan. That is the plan. We can say that's not a good plan. We can do that. We are well within our rights to do that. And they can go through the motions if they want and say that here's your feasibility plan, it's not feasible. That would be unfortunate. That would be unfortunate. They get to do it. What is within our control? Our control is to say, we think you can do better. You can do better than to just handing this over to DOC, even if it's only for 5 or 7 people. I believe they can do better. I know that, and this gets to Teresa's point, they don't want to. They can, they don't want to, and they don't want to because it costs a lot of money. And it requires a commitment that we are going to spend this much money on this problem. Right now, they don't have to spend that money on that problem because they're handing it over to DOC, who has told them we can absorb this. One of the ways they're absorbing that is they're going to shove it into the workforce that can least handle it right now, who are working 16-hour shifts, sometimes 2 days in a row, and do not have the training to provide forensics care. They just don't. They're corrections officers. We can say that is not good enough. I am saying that is not good enough. So if it starts looking like we're giving a window to let that happen, I will be a no vote. I am one person. I am one person on a committee of 11. You all can pass this out 9-1 or 10-1. You can pass it out 9-2. I am going to do my best to try and convince us that we can do better and that we have an opportunity right now to do better. Same opportunity people who have sat in these seats have had for decades, and they have always said, we're not going to spend the money. That's why we're here. That is why we're here. That is why we do not have a forensics facility. Do we want a forensics facility? If the answer is yes, let's get it started. If we don't get it started, it's going to be another 4 years. If we don't get it started then, it's going to be another 6 years. And then 8, and then 16, and then 20. I'm interested in starting. That's what I'm interested in doing. You don't need my vote. You don't. And I've lost votes before. I've had a really good session with regard to policy that I've passed. I can hang my hat on that. So you know where I stand on this. And if you want to find some middle ground and it looks appealing to me, I'll say fine. It's not going to be a hell yes vote. It's going to be a fine. And if it doesn't look good to me, and if I'm worried that we're just handing this over to DC, I'm going to be a no. And there might be more, there might be less. You might pass this out 10-1. Who knows? I don't know. I could pass it as is right now. Hold on just a second, because there was one more little nugget in there that I wanted, but I can't remember what it was.
You remember.
And I can't remember.
I was gonna say, Troy, I love this passion. I feel like I had it a couple minutes ago. And, our long-term vision is the same, because I don't think it should be in this facility long-term. But I want to tell you that I accepted that you have a position. That when you were talking about that we can tell the administration they're going to do something, I appreciated that and I agreed. I felt when I was talking and I said we could make the administration do stuff, people were like, no, we can't. So I want to push back on that point that we're both saying the same thing. We can make people do things because we have that ability if we get enough other people to vote with us. I do separate them long-term, short-term, but our long-term goal is the same. And in my plan, my thing isn't, and I know I'm never going to get this vote through, is I'm not asking them, or if it was my bill, I wouldn't be writing, hey, I'd like you to come back with a plan. My bill says, you're going to do this. Yeah. But you and I both know we can't do that far in order to get enough other votes. But I just want to tell you, I appreciate what you said, and I agree with you. The only thing I'm not even sure I agree or disagree with is whether or not they want to do something, or because I don't like to assign motives to people, but I also can't say that I know that they want to. So I'm torn on that, but it's still leading to the same result that nothing's happening. So
I heard a very clear indication that we can't do this yesterday.
Cameron?
Isn't it possible they say we don't want this responsibility the way we have the authority now? Give us the tools and we can accomplish this small group what we want to do, and that is to give them therapeutic programming. Isn't that possible? They said, no, we don't want it with the way it is. You haven't given us money. You haven't given us authorization to do therapeutics. So no, we don't want it the way it is. We place plenty of laws on people that can't do what they're told they have to do. That might be why they're saying we don't want it.
But then I think that's a budget request, is it not? And not a legislation request. if you wanted to just offer these services, would you not put in a request for the money to provide those services?
And I thought that's what Commissioner Murad was saying yesterday, or at least clarifying that we need direction, authorization, funding to do this for this small set of people. So we got majority, but we need this extra piece so that we can at least do that.
But that sounds like a funding request and not a legislation request.
You know, why wasn't it included in the
I don't-
government's budget for FY
I don't.
25,
DOC was
FY
going.
26, and FY 27? Because it goes back to your question, Brian.
Mhm.
What could they offer now that you wouldn't need this legislation?
There may be restrictions I don't know about, but yeah, in terms of what I can see, yes.
That goes right back to that. And that's what we keep going around and around and around in circle on. And
But I would just say that I wouldn't vote no on our amendment the way it is. So I don't want people to take that. I just think there's a better way.
Kevin,
Is it fair to say if nothing happens, DOC still has the responsibility, right?
and there's no services, the Agency of Human, there's no services that the Agency of Human Services is offering. There's a failure on all of the agency.
And that's an ongoing choice.
That's a, that.
It's an
yeah, that's-
ongoing
they've got
choice.
it already. We're not giving it to them. They currently have it. And say, we don't want it the way it is. We can either do something to help the short term and the long term, or we can wash our hands and let it continue.
No, that's not a fair comparison.
So the question is, if we do something,
No, they're
short-
choosing not to fund it. That's the choice.
if we do something short term, even if we're saying in the interim, Agency of Human Services, not DOC, but Agency of Human Services shall provide therapeutic services to those folks who are currently being held.
Restitutions, competency,
Right. That if we required that right now, that the Agency of Human Services, excluding DOC, for those folks who are held in our correctional facility, that the Agency of Human Services needs to start providing therapeutic restoration competency services to those folks now, effective July 1st of this year. Does that open up the door for the fear that it would be DOC providing services for these folks?
It would be adding to the status quo in a way that is probably helpful.
That
That's
is probably what.
my helpful. That's my take. I would add one caveat that they may not use, shall not use any contract that is currently providing medical care through the DOC. They can't use that path in this case. That's a conflict of interest that I'm not interested
In the
in.
interim, before the forensic facility plan comes forward, and before January 1st, 28, for those folks who are currently housed in a correctional facility, the Agency of Human Services shall provide restoration, competency restoration program, therapeutic support, whatever, for those folks now.
Or the possible out of state.
Or
If we
possible
can
out of
get, if we can get the figures.
Now, I'm sure the Agency of Human Services is gonna blow up on this and say, we can't do this.
Well, and I'll say the obvious, it does nothing for community safety. I mean, it may allay some degree of concern about the services being provided to this small population, but it doesn't change the status quo of community level safety. It's obvious, but there it is.
I didn't understand what you said.
Well, to the degree that the last few minutes has been talking about providing services to this population
Right.
in one way or another, that does nothing about the concern about community level safety, right? If we're just, providing services is great, and I want that, but it doesn't talk about the other, portion, half, whatever you want to call it. Does not talk about community safety. It's talking about services being provided to these folks. Important, but
And to Connor's point,
yes.
is it coaching or is it sort of, is it restoration? Yeah. I don't have to pick that scale right now.
Again, I don't know the answer to this. I wish I did. I wish it, but the part that probably is more public safety oriented is the part of, does Does the law allow for keeping people who are deemed incompetent in? I don't know how many people that affects. I have no idea. I don't, but I think that's the short-term part. Anyway,
You looked it up, you said 70% are restored to competency statistically, but 30% was that.
73.
Okay, well, whatever it is, you at least saw one set of statistics that says a majority of people have the competency restored. So there is evidence of what we are hoping to accomplish if we give them the therapeutics.
Remember, competency is fluid. You had your hand up or no?
Kind of.
Are we confident or not? Feeling pretty.
I don't think any of us are confident in this room right now. So, but I guess my question is, what's the problem we're trying to fix, right? So I think I felt this was really positive myself.
Well, I'm
Just want to
glad.
say that. I feel like we moved a little. I think all of us are maybe more on a page, not on the same, but we're understanding each other, which I think is good. But I guess my question to Kim is, so these people are coming out of the system, whatever it is that we create. And if they're deemed, NGRI, right? Or do we have any way of stopping that from happening? When people come out of whatever system, forensics, the prison system now, if they've done something bad, but they are incompetent to stand trial or they're, reasons of insanity, are they coming out of the system anyway and going back into our neighborhoods? And have we fixed the problem? Is that a problem?
So if we created this structure
Mm-hmm.
to have a facility, the gatekeeping function would be the dangerousness to public question. So if you're getting found incompetent and not restorable, like that's no longer an option, you're asking the public safety question.
Right.
And under what conditions can it be released and supervised? The same would be for not guilty by reason of insanity. If the condition, if the person's qualifying condition is leading them to be potentially a risk to the public, like if that's there, they need to stay in the facility until that risk has been mitigated. And as many people have said, we're basing this on the information we know and the clinical experts who are guessing people's future behavior. So, are we ever 100% certain? No. But we're at least analyzing that risk and trying to mitigate it, and then releasing a person under conditions and supervision is what this is structured to do. So yes, it's at least right now, where we don't have that risk assessment gatekeeping function.
Okay,
So that's your public safety piece
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
for a small number of folks.
Yes, and if you don't mind, I just want to jump in.
I was looking there for a reason, yeah.
When you say services to these folks.
Yes.
If you're doing competency restoration, again, there has to be a legal framework because you're requiring this person to do this competency restoration.
Yes,
You can't right now, I mean, the DOC could provide, and I believe this is what was repeatedly testified to, like if somebody has a mental health condition that requires certain medication, like they're getting their medication under the health framework right now as a detainee. But they're not, you can't impose competency restoration without a legal framework
yes.
to do that. So that's why we would need this bill or something like it to create this framework that the person has been found incompetent and then is now being held longer to do this competency restoration. You can't just right now keep them longer with services, like that would definitely not pass the due process test.
The heck with a
Well,
show.
it was almost a mind meld. It was so close. But like, so For this group,
You don't have to.
you were talking about folks who are found either not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent, but they're still a danger to others, let's say to society. Are they properly understood as being criminal justice involved at that point?
I'm sorry.
Can you say that again? Brian?
Yeah, maybe it doesn't make
Under
sense.
due process, under due process
Just-
considerations.
No, I'm trying to figure out. In my mind, there are different categories, there are different buckets, and maybe the problem is they overlap and I'm easily confused, but these folks are deemed not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent, and yet they would be a danger to society. How is that population properly understood? Are they subject to criminal justice at that point?
So the person who's found incompetent, their charges are still pending. And then at some point could be dismissed with prejudice. But if at any point they could be refiled within the statute of limitations. So for these life offenses, the potential to refile that charge is always there for the most part.
Okay,
So there's, depending on whether the charge was dismissed or not, a connection to the criminal justice system. Folks found not guilty by reason of insanity.
or dismissed with prejudice, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
No, that's okay.
I should,
You know,
yeah,
we need
sorry.
that. This is where, yeah, the flow charts come in.
yeah,
The person found not guilty by reason of insanity, this is done differently in different states. Often that would be a civil commitment after that if there's a risk to the public. So they wouldn't have an open criminal charge, if that's your question. Yeah, the criminal charge is done. We would still find them sort of connected to the criminal justice system in that if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that you've committed all the acts. You just didn't have the criminal mind,
Yes.
right? To have criminal culpability.
yes,
You're still culpable of the act, you just don't have criminal culpability.
yes,
But there is, I think to your point, there is no open criminal case. And that's why the language in this bill has that the court can retain jurisdiction over the person for this to move forward as written,
okay.
Yeah.
to deal with the public safety piece.
I would say what we do with folks now is like an important conversation. It's worthy and it's one we have tremendous potential to mess up with just chatting around the room right here. Most of this is in judiciary's
Mhm.
hands. If you
And
look at
human
the,
services.
if you look at the legal framework,
Yeah.
plus it's an unfunded mandate, we would be handing corrections. I don't know where they would pull
Or-
that
or
from
the
out of the rest of the
agency.
budget.
Or the agency.
But I believe in maybe setting up a process where we could do it through joint justice over the summer and come back with a budget adjustment. But you're talking about like, this is millions of dollars of the corrections budget, which is already pretty strapped here. I think I'd go back to, I'm okay with this amendment. I have a lot of problems with it. I get the interim plan. I just think it should be a separate process than this, or we're never gonna get out of here.
So should we do instead language that they also have to come in, the justice oversight, with an interim plan proposal?
Yep.
That would be included in the budget BAA.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
You can't legitimately ask for two plans if you tell them one of the plans,
No, this is the
Plan.
interim.
no, I understand. I'm talking, I thought we were.
This gets you to 28.
Adding
This
to
gets you
this
to 28,
This is just
requirement
a
for
20.
short term.
get you to 28, be included in the BAA of the general fund.
Right.
Come
No,
Jan-
I'm on board with that 100%.
Yep.
But if we're gonna go with this and say we want two plans, or at least two plans, you can't tell them the DOC can't be part of one of those plans, is what I'm saying.
Well, I think you could.
Well, you can't say have a plan with DOC if you tell them in the intent, you can't have DOC in.
That's,
I wanna see it.
Well,
yeah, it's two separate things, I
It's two
think.
separate
That's
things
long
here.
term.
Yep.
An agreement on the short term, we need the BAA in 27 or whatever. I'm just saying, rather than going with this, I would think you'd have to strip out the words, you can't use DOC, and then ask them to have a plan that has DOC in it.
No, look at the language on the intent. DOC shall not operate or staff the forensic facility. That's what we're saying. They don't operate it and they don't staff it to provide the competency restoration piece. They can provide security outside the facility, and they can provide security at the front end of the facility
Okay,
if it's located on a correctional campus. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Am I off base here?
so
That's what we're saying. So what we're saying is DOC is not providing the services to the folks, the therapeutic services. That's the Agency of Human Services. And the Agency of Human Services needs a medical director to do that. That's what we're saying.
And not from WellPath.
That's the goal, not from WellPath, because you're saying that it's not from DOC.
Okay.
And then if we had language that for the interim of providing therapeutic services or competency restoration programming with those current folks now that are being held in our correctional facility, excluding DOC from providing that restoration competency program, what is the agency needs to come before Joint Justice Oversight with their plan on how to do that and the funding required so that there can be a recommendation in the general fund BAA on January 1st, 27.
That's as fast as you're realistically gonna do it.
Yeah, you're not gonna do it any faster than that.
I can get behind that.
Okay, it's noon. We did something.
I think we should be proud of ourselves. Come on.
you got it all. What do you
That's
got?
ridiculous.
You got all of it.
Okay, we're gonna break for lunch.
You go ahead.
That is-
You got it all.
We're on the floor at 1:00. I would like a few people to help me work with Katie on this language change. Mary, you want to help? And Troy or Connor? Connor?
Sure.
I think Connor, so I think Troy would. Let us. I gotta connect, we've got to connect with Katie and find out when she is. Okay. Bounces off with Martin and Teresa's, because they're involved in this.
Your fingers.
So we'll break for now from YouTube. We're on the floor at 1:00.
Yep.
And let's